So apparently, I wake up this morning on this Memorial Day weekend, Sunday morning, May 26th, the day of AEW Double or Nothing. And I read an article from, I guess, the New York Post. Some people feel that, that's an article you have to take with a grain of salt, but New York Post is one of the more reliable newspapers slash tabloid newspapers out there. And apparently, there was an interview with Mercedes Monet, aka Sasha Banks. And it seemed that Sasha, much to surprise and criticism, and I guess you could say, how do I put this? The poor management skills of one Tony Khan, Mercedes has been cleared medically since December. And she's been under contract with them since January. And a lot of people read this and they're like, well, wait a minute. If you've had her under contract since almost the beginning of the year, or literally the beginning of the year, and you waited to debut her in March in her hometown, then why didn't you make her debut, kind of an event to where not only would she announce that, hey, she's here, but then she's going to also have a match at your Dynasty pay-per-view. People are looking at that, they're like, where's the logic in having her under contract, knowing she's medically cleared, but, you don't want to use her until tonight. Now, some people, that could be diehard AEW fans or, unbiased, as they say they are, wrestling fans, they will come out and they will say, well, she has other commitments. Maybe she had other movie roles she was taking care of, with, streaming, projects with Disney Plus, and maybe she had some movie roles that she was working for upcoming projects that are going to be seen theatrically, or, hey, maybe she had some music commitments and other things. And you know what? That might be true to an extent. And that's a notification. I do apologize if you heard that. But like I said, that might be true to an extent. But even so, they could have at least had her, I will admit, they could have at least had her compete at Dynasty. They could have at least had her do that. Compete at Dynasty and everything, and, go from there. Just go from there, test the waters. Give her a squash match if you want to, like wrestling used to do in the old days. I mean, how many times when you would watch old school WWF and old school WCW and even old school TNA, how many times would they basically take a local jobber or a talent that used to be something and now they're an enhancement talent? How many times would they take them, put them in the ring with somebody and say, okay, you're going in there, you're going to get a big payday, but you're going to get squashed. And you're going to get squashed by the new person. How many times have they done that? A lot. So you're telling me, and you're telling everybody else, just by reading that article, that she couldn't, be at least given, a squash match at Dynasty to kind of set the tone, to send a message to Willow, her opponent tonight, and all the other women in the women's division that, hey, the CEO is here, the boss is here, and oh, by the way, what you just saw is just a sample of what I'm capable of. They couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. And I can understand the frustration from people like those I follow, like Just Alex and JD from NY206 off the script, and even Solomonster. Maybe he's going to talk about this tonight during his review. Maybe he's talked about it on his podcast and he'll clip it and say, hey, this is before the pay-per-view. I want to talk about this because this shows the incompetence, once again, of Tony Khan. But I can understand where they and a lot of people are coming from. The frustration of like, look, you have this multi-talented woman who's one of the best in the ring, and yet you have the knowledge that she's cleared. She's medically cleared to compete in the ring, and yet you want to hold off on that until tonight. It doesn't make sense. Again, you want to go the safe route. Put her, like I said, go the old school route. Put her on a pay-per-view against an enhancement talent that used to be somewhat of a big deal in your company, but now it's there just to put talent over. It makes more sense. And then you have her get on the mic, send the message to Willow, send the message to the women's roster that she's here, and what they just saw is a sample of what she's capable of. But Tony didn't do that. Now, maybe some would say, well, Tony maybe didn't want to take the risk, or maybe Sasha's legal team, said, hey, look, she's medically cleared, but we don't want her in the ring until, this certain time, and da-da-da. And, look, maybe that's true too. Maybe her legal team added the, stipulation, little catch in the clause of a contract of, hey, she's not to wrestle until at least the summer, or until at least Memorial Day weekend, or whatever. And maybe that was it. Or maybe her medical step, maybe her doctor said, hey, she's cleared, but we advise you not get in the ring until at least, the beginning of summer or Memorial Day weekend. Maybe that was it. Or, again, maybe Tony didn't want to risk anything. People will say maybe Tony didn't want to risk anything because who's to say, she comes back, she wouldn't get injured again. I mean, let's not forget, there have been several times to where a wrestler will make a return to the ring, get back in the ring after coming back from an injury, and in that return match get injured again. Kevin Nash is a good example of that. The thing that gets me though, is that, I can understand maybe the legal team and her doctors advising for her not to get in the ring or be put in the ring until a later date. I can understand maybe she had that in her, she herself, put that in her contract. I get it. But, and I can also understand that she, she had probably other commitments, in music and movies and streaming shows and all that. And I get it. But still, to me, I also understand the frustration and just disappointment in the incompetence of one Tony Khan. Because Tony's the boss. He's the boss of the boss. Okay? He's the boss of the quote-unquote CEO. So you're telling me he couldn't just say, look, hey, you're medically cleared, Mercedes, so what I want to do is put you in the ring for at least a squash match or Dynasty? You're telling me he couldn't do that? He couldn't do that? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Or what? Did Mercedes say, well, I'd rather debut a Double or Nothing in Las Vegas because that suits who I am. Debut in St. Louis at Dynasty, that's nothing. That's nothing. Look, if he gave into what she wanted, if he gave into what she wanted, when he suggested, hey, I want to debut you at Dynasty in a Java match, and she's like, no, I want to do it at Double or Nothing, that fits me. If he said, okay, fine, no problem, you're the boss. If he did that, that shows incompetence. That shows you are more of a fan of the characters they portray than a boss of the company they're now part of that you run. So, I look at this, and I can understand, like I said, the frustration that fans, they read this, they're like, what? Are you effing kidding me? I can understand the frustration. And I can also, in a way, understand maybe there might be reasons for it, maybe inexcusable reasons, but I can understand. But still, if you have someone medically cleared and you say you're a fan of wrestling for as long as you have been, there's a page you could take out of the playbook. And that playbook is put her in an enhancement match at Dynasty. Put her in against somebody that you used to push, now pushes others, and let her have a walk in the park match. And then, like I said, have her get on the mic and say, hey, Willow, everybody in the women's division, the CEO is here, the boss is here, and this is just a sample of what I'm capable of doing. And if they would have done that, guess what? Nobody would be complaining, about, her just waltzing in and getting a TBS title match. Some could say, well, there is a story behind it. Yes. But if AEW is committed to the rankings in some ways, which they're on and off about, they're either, red hot about or ice cold about, then she should have at least wrestled some matches. Again, maybe one or two enhancement matches, one on Dynasty and one on Dynamite, and that's it. And then you can justify, okay, she's just cleaning out the ring rust, and here we go. And that's another thing too. There's that old saying of, that's that old question, I should say, of how much ring rust would they have? Well, we don't know. I mean, yeah, she could have been training, no doubt. She could be training, or could have been training, in private, getting that ring rust off. That's fine. She might have been rehearsing with Willow, behind the scenes, getting the ring rust off, going over, kind of rehearsing the match, going over it time after time, to try to steal the show. And that might be true. But even with that in mind, she should have at least, I do agree, she should have at least had one or two enhancement talent matches to show what she's capable of. One on Dynasty and one on Dynamite. And I think people would be more, like I say, accepting of the fact that she's getting a shot, at Double or Nothing tonight for the TBS title against Willow. They'd be more accepting of that and understanding that, there is a story, and hey, she just showed us what she's probably capable of doing, and she might even have more in store than we've just seen, or what she just showed us. But again, this just shows you that Tony Khan, once again, is proving to be nothing more than a fan. Nothing more than a fan of wrestling, that everybody else is picking up on this now. He's like an action figure collector. He's like a collector of toys and, figurines and stuff that you display. I mean, you look around my room when I do room tours, you see what I have. Those are my collections. JD just went out and bought the Robosan Megatron, if you will, because he's a fan since he's been a kid. And he's doing that to collect it, not to play with it. That's kind of what Tony Khan is doing here. He's collecting these figures and only bringing them out to play with them, or allow them to play, when he wants to. And that's not a good sign of a boss. Excuse me, almost sneezed there. I was going to pause the recording, almost sneezed there. But like I said, that's not a good sign, of a boss. When he does that. That's more of the signs of a fan. That's more of the signs of a fan than a boss. And, the more he does stuff like this, the more he's going to get criticized. Now, people could come out and say, well, look what WWE did with Jade. Let me say something there. What WWE and Triple H did with Jade is what Tony Khan didn't do at first, until the likes of Bryan Danielson and others like him got there. What he's doing, what Triple H and WWE did with Jade when they debuted her and held her off until the Rumble and Mania and even King of the Ring, and even some of the singles matches on Raw and SmackDown, what they did is they put her at the Performance Center and had her train properly. Yeah, she's still kind of green, she's still kind of learning, but you could see the improvement. A much more vast improvement than what she had in AEW. And that improvement in AEW didn't come, it didn't come until she basically, got under the tutelage and training of people like Bryan Danielson. And that's a fact. That's the truth. And and here's the thing. Knowing about that, they're applying that training she got from him to her training she's getting in WWE. That's the big difference. And here's the thing. They didn't wait until WrestleMania. Okay, they didn't wait till WrestleMania to fully debut her in a match. No, they said, okay, time to test the waters, Jade. What did they do? They had her go compete in the Royal Rumble and last to at least the final 3. Yeah, she came in late, but they had her go test the waters. And for what we saw temporarily, very impressive. Very impressive. And in that match, they teased the fact that she's probably the only one that's going to be able to woman handle the likes of Nia Jax. So, so they didn't wait long. And they also showed you progression. They didn't wait until like 1 week or 2 weeks later to give you a package, on her, saying, hey, she's, been going through all this to get ready. No, they showed you images and video of her on WWE.com and on Raw and SmackDown and even NXT to show you she is getting herself ready properly. She's training to be the very best that the fans will see. Period. And that she's going to be the future of the women's division. The point I'm making here with this comparison, okay? The point I'm making is Triple H was, preparing her correctly, and she wasn't injured. She wasn't injured, okay? Mercedes, had been injured at the beginning of last year, but was cleared at the end of last year. And she could have been training and all that. Heck, she could have appeared at Wrestle Kingdom, and challenged for the IWGP Women's Championship if she wanted to. But no, she didn't. She could have appeared, at some of the North American events, but she didn't. She could have said, hey, I want to debut at Revolution, make the night that Sting's debuting, that sold-out crowd, even more bigger, but she didn't. And I understand, you don't want to disrespect Sting's retirement, and that's another notification. I do apologize. But, like I said, I understand that. I get that. I understand and I get that. But here's the deal. Okay? If you know she's medically cleared and you're paying her millions, but you're the boss that agreed to these terms, you should say at least, hey, if you're medically cleared, I want to get you in the ring by at least Dynasty. That's what Tony Khan should have done, but he didn't. Because I think, honestly, and this is just my opinion, Tony Khan buys in to the character. He doesn't see her as Mercedes by the real person she is, Mercedes Vondor. I do apologize for butchering the last name. No, he sees her as CEO Mercedes Mone, the boss Sasha Banks. He doesn't see her as the real her. Because if he did, he would tell her, Mercedes, I might be paying you a lot of money. You might be one of the highest paid women in wrestling right now, but I'm your boss. You're going in the ring at Dynasty. But he didn't do that. Because I think he views her, just like he views a lot of these talents, as the in-ring personas and not as the real people. But that's just my opinion. But again, you want to make the comparison between her and Jade. Thing is, Jade wasn't injured, and Triple H wanted to make sure she was properly prepared for an in-ring debut. All right? He wanted to make sure she was properly prepared, for an in-ring debut. And she did have a schedule, yes, but that schedule allowed her time to be with her daughter and her family. And under the Triple H regime, the Triple H era, that's the most important thing. Whether you're active in the ring or you're training, that's the most important thing. And I'm going to say this. You want to make that kind of comparison? That's your opinion. But when you go back and you notice the difference, between the two, you'll see why, Triple H was justified in holding off Jade to the Rumble, WrestleMania, and King of the Ring, and even some of those squash matches on Raw and SmackDown. You'll see why he held off until that time frame. Okay? And it's not because she was injured. He wanted to make sure she was ready properly. Mercedes here, she has vast years of experience over Jade. And she's cleared medically since December. I mean, if Triple H was able to sign her, he would say, hey, you're cleared, you're coming back in the Royal Rumble. And she would have no say in it. He'd pay her all the money she wants, but he'd be like, you'll go in it and say, here's your deal, but guess what? I'm your boss now. Once again, it's in the contract, you signed it, you're being in the Rumble. And she'd have nothing to say about it because she's getting her money. She's getting that creative control, whatever, that creative leave that she wants. But at the end of the day, Triple H, unlike Tony Khan, says, hey, you got all that, but guess what? I'm still your boss. You're in the Rumble. And that would be the end of it. She'd have nothing more to say because legally, she's now part of the team again. But Tony Khan's not doing that. And once again, it shows that he's more of a fan than a boss because I think I actually views her not as the real Mercedes, but as the CEO Mercedes, as the boss Sasha. And that's it. But, yeah. If she's been medically cleared since December and he's had her under contract since then I agree. It's on Tony. It's on Tony for not stepping up and being a boss. A real boss over the, gimmicky boss, if you know what I mean. So I can understand that's another notification. I do apologize for that. Again, that's another notification. I do apologize for that. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Again, I understand kind of from both sides, maybe why there's reasons or why it's inexcusable. But I have to favor the side that finds, a lot of what's going on. Reading this being, like another show of incompetence and lack of leadership on Tony Khan. And that he's acting more as a fan than a boss. But, that's just what I'm doing here is just giving you my opinions. But what about yours? What are your thoughts, guys? And by the way, you're probably noticing the title, if it's fitting in there, Super Chats were open. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. What were your thoughts on the fact that Mercedes Mone, a.k.a. Sasha Banks, had been medically cleared since December, and being under contract with AEW, Tony Khan didn't act on putting her in at least a showcase squash match at Dynasty and Dynamite to give people and the women's division and in Story Willow pretty much an idea of what they were in store for. Because you could have her come out after those matches and say, it's just a taste of what I can do, and there's more to it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Tony Khan once again showed how incompetent he is as a leader? Or do you think maybe there were other reasons, like maybe music commitments, movie commitments, maybe her legal team and doctors didn't want her to, fully get back in the ring until at least the beginning of summer, which a lot of people look at Memorial Day weekend as being. What are your thoughts? Or do you think maybe Tony suggested Dynasty, but being such a fan and not being a boss, Mercedes said, no, that don't work for me, Tony. I want Las Vegas. That fits me better. What are your thoughts on that, guys? What are your thoughts? The fact that they may have caved in if that was the case. What are your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comments as well as in the live chat during the premiere. And until then, guys, I'll talk to y'all later.